My ongoing advocacy for Big Pharma has raised a few eyebrows, as people have pointed out. There really are a wide range of stakeholders involved in our response to COVID here in Australia, and that's fine. But the contribution of companies like Pfizer and AstraZeneca in vaccines and GSK in treatments really has been remarkable. And in fact, it shines a light on the way the system works here, because the system in Australia is very much supply driven. The way vaccines and treatments have evolved in relation to COVID help illustrate this. Essentially, governments are sitting and waiting for pharmaceutical companies to bring to them medicines that have been repurposed or developed, or perhaps they're at some stage of a clinical trial, with a view to that government or that buyer then assessing it and making decisions about whether or not to purchase it. And if you're a little bit over COVID, as an example of thinking through these issues related to our system being so supply driven, think about a disease like shingles. Think about the way a government deals with a disease like that. What the government essentially does is sit and wait for the pharmaceutical companies to bring solutions to the table for it to consider, to review, assess, and then potentially fund. They effectively wait until a pharmaceutical player comes to them with a medication which has been developed, researched, fully finished, and ready to go. And the government decides whether or not it's going to be approved and whether or not they're going to invest the money in funding it. And it's interesting because it's not as if there's a health promotion person that's trying to work through how shingles is being dealt with in other countries and what the best practice therapeutics and medications and prevention strategies might be around the world and how we bring those strategies to Australia. It's not really how it works, because that would be a demand-led strategy. In Australia, it's very much supply-driven. The Federal Health Department was recently asked its stance on the prospect of funding a new shingles vaccine here in Australia. And the public response from the department, which was widely reported in the media, was that they would welcome a resubmission from the relevant manufacturer. So what that means is they're waiting. They're waiting for the manufacturer to progress a solution to dealing with shingles here in Australia. Now, I'm not saying any of this to be critical of anybody. I'm not even saying it's necessarily a bad system, but what it does do is bring home how important the role is that's played by pharmaceutical manufacturers and developers. Because the next time you're wondering why people suggest that the only game in town when it comes to developing, manufacturing and distributing vaccines and medications at the time of COVID, that the only game in town is Big Pharma, just stop and think for a moment why that is actually true. It's true because our system is supply driven by the medicines that are supplied by the manufacturers.